quick little series to go through. Make sure you're keeping your body tuned up or making progress. So 90-90, lock that lumbar, knees are above 90. Start just reaching out in front as far as you can. So some flexion, extension, thoracic rotation, and then get into some arm sweeps. Handcuff yourself in the back. So a couple arm sweeps, handcuff yourself from the back. From the other side, it's reaching, extending, sweeping up overhead, and then getting in some internal rotation or handcuffing yourself in the back. Anywhere from 5 to 10 reps each side. From mobility, we're going to go into stability, so trying to keep your spine nice and long. If you need to, I'd rather you be rounded rather than arched and extended, but the goal is to keep that spine neutral, pressing the opposite hand into the knee. You're only going to bring your arm and leg as far as you can without losing that perfect posture. So it might look like this. Hopefully you can get full extension of the hip. We're going to go both sides. We might just go anywhere from 20 to 30 seconds on each side. Goal would be to build up to a minute pretty easily, able to breathe, able to talk. From there, my favorite, a little bit of toe mobility. So tuck the toes, get a good little stretch, start to be aware. Can people hinge, or do they have no awareness of hip hinging and being able to keep neutral spine? After that toe mobility, you're going to start tucking your tail and then arching. So we talk about core control. This is your center of mass. Can't expect to make plays out on the field if you don't have easy control of that spine, or in martial arts, as they call it, the fifth limb. From there, we're going to set a nice neutral spine. We might just tap the ground. Same thing, 30 seconds. Can I breathe? Can I balance a glass of water or my shoe on my low back? Can I start to go into these patterns very simply? And those should be really basic. From there, we're going to go into some crawling patterns. Might just start opposite arm and leg lifts, starting with some isometrics. Might get into a little bit of dynamic crawling. Go back into hips. So we just hammered spine mobility and stability. We're going to go into some hip mobility, so posterior hip with some thoracic rotation. We're going to whip up, squeezing that back glute, reaching up, and then looking like an owl behind. So the simplified version, hands down, foot sweeps around, lots of stable bases and points of contact with the ground. Foot comes up, reach up, twist like an owl behind you. More difficulty would be having that eccentric control and trying not to use your arms and creating a little bit of whip from your hip. And then we can always switch sides, going into that, listening to the ground. I'm moving pretty fast here, but I start to get some of that rotation and control through that hip. So that's a really nice series I like to show people, is just simply this, because we know if we mobilize the hips, it's going to help with the knees below and the spine above. From that hip mobility series, we're going to go into hip stability with some isometric holds at the top. After that, we'll go into some half get-ups. So whatever arm is long, that's my leg. Whatever arm is long, same leg is long. Whatever leg is up, same arm is up. Drive and hold. And we're going into these half get-ups. If I've been with someone for a while, long leg or left arm, left leg comes under. Slower I go. I like iPhone slow-mo here. The more stability we start to create. From there, a bunch of different downward dog variations. We've got shoulder taps. We've got less points of contact, so opposite arm and leg. Those are like 2 or 3 lifts, so we can really focus on trunk stability, and then show me some mobility of that posterior chain, ankles. And I really encourage people to bend their knees and push that ground away. We can get into that Kelly starette, screwing the ground out. I can start to educate people on their scapula. So can you slide and glide overhead? And then I'm going to screw out. Maybe I get a little bit wider base, and I start to work some overhead mobility, or sorry, overhead stability for my overhead athletes, working on some shoulder stability. And then I'm right back here, here, and then into some type of deep squat variation, maybe with support, holding on to something, adding in, once again, we're addressing ankles, thoracic spine. I might encourage my athletes to just kind of play around, open up all different angles within those ankles, thoracic spine, and then we're upright. And from there, we might get something into some type of single leg stability, being able to own these sprinter positions, getting into that world's greatest. And just these series alone, you know, I'm at about 5 minutes, is more than enough. If I were to pick my big three, it would simply be hanging out in a deep squat position, holding on to something with my back up against the couch. That's one. Two is a rear foot elevated. We have a bunch of different options and variations. And then three is this hip, thoracic, posterior, and anterior hip. So my big three mobility exercises would be that, and that whole little flow on the front side. Just that will have you turned on and ready to go, and most importantly, just be a fine-tuned machine.